Hello.
Hello, sir.
How are you doing?
I am doing well, Ben. Thank God.
How's your tea?
My tea's good. Oh man, these lights are so bright. I'm trying to think if I should shut this off or not. Damn. 1 second. I don't know how long that's gonna last. Oh, nice. It is lasting. So how was it with Mom?
Mom was good. It was good. It was nice. My mom and actually a special visit from my brother. My brother also came along, so that was cool.
So showed him around town.
Yeah, it was. I think both of the first time in Austin, in Texas. So it was cool. Yeah, we did a little bit of. We went around like a few parks and places here. Did a lot of home cooking, which was fun as well. So yeah.
Did they manage to leave Israel behind and everything that's going on over here, or did they end up bringing it to you?
I think for the most part they were able to leave it behind, which I think was nice for them to have a little bit of a break because it's constant in Israel, obviously.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's quite intense right now. Again.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it won't last long. And as always, may the merits of our Torah be used for the safe return of the captives, and everyone should be healthy. That any innocent people on both sides, of course, they should have a speedy recovery. War sometimes necessary, but always very unfortunate.
Yeah.
All right. So where were we? Oh, we're starting the new one today.
We're starting a new one, yeah.
We're starting the new one. Do you mind scrolling down?
Yeah.
I just want to see what this is. These are long. Okay, scroll down. Oh man.
Yeah, this one.
Okay. Well. All right, maybe we'll do one today. We'll see. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, I think we'll see. We'll see where we get. We'll probably do one. We'll see. I think we'll be able to get through one. I think so. Next week we're going to postpone because I'm going to be in New York, and then the following week we'll continue.
Cool.
All right. So we are starting the sixth parak, the sixth chapter of Pirkei Avot, of Ethics of Our Father. And as we mentioned in the past, we mentioned how the sixth chapter is not part of the original tractate of Avot, of the Mishnah of Avot. And however, it's still very, very ancient. And it was added, it was like a collection of sayings of the Tanaim that dealing with the study of Torah that they added on. Later on, they added it to the Braitot. Do you know what a Braita is?
Yeah, the Braita is it's a story by a Tana. It was just not inserted into the Mishnah.
Exactly. A Braita, from its Aramaic word bar, means outside. I mean, bar also can mean sun, but bar also means outside, which is it's external to the Mishnah. And so that's what it means. And the Braita are, like you said, it contains the words of the Tanaim, which they don't make it inside to the order of the Mishnah. Yeah. And it didn't make it inside the final editing, the final cut with Judah the Prince, who collected, of course, Judah the Prince, we spoke about many, many times. Fascinating character who compiled all these things together. He had a beautiful and very interesting relationship with the wise emperor, with Marcus Aurelius, or another name, Antoninus. There's very, very deep teachings with regards to their relationship. Rashi talks about how when Sarah is going, it says that the twins, Esau and Jacob, were fighting inside her stomach, and Rashi talks about that fighting and that intense conversation, so to speak, is really the conversation of Judah the Prince and Antoninus, which is very interesting. It says that, and it's sort of alluding to the fact that Antoninus was showcasing the proper orientation of Esau and his power. Esau obviously was very, very powerful, and also we learn the trait of respecting one's parents from Esau. And there's a sense also where hopefully one day Esau, the Gentiles of the world, will also tap into their that strength and to the positive elements of Esau, and then there could be what was ultimately supposed to be a relationship of Jacob and Esau together, which would have been a very, very powerful duo. Hopefully, we'll have that again. Sorry for the but that Judah Prince
detail I actually didn't know necessarily about Judah the Prince, Eudonacy, and Marcus Aurelius, and about that kind of like detail about that. So it's interesting.
And it's you could look into that Rashi in Genesis and Bereshit. It's very interesting what we see, and then you could go into the Rashi of the Bereshit just specifically about the development and where even the blessings that Isaac, even the blessing that Isaac gives his sons Jacob, not Abraham, Jacob and Esau, there was always an intention for both of them to get blessings because there was a sense of them doing this together.
Right.
Okay. And the sixth chapter is called Kinyan Torah, the acquisition of Torah, because this is what we're dealing with. And so why don't you give it a read?
Nice. Yeah, I see. I see from my magic book too that they mentioned this as well.
What?
The Kinyan Torah speaks about the greatness of Torah.
Yeah, that's the focus of this chapter.
Cool. Okay. So משנה א', שנו חכמים בלשון המשנה, ברוך שבחר בהם ובמשנתם. רבי מאיר אומר, כל העוסק בתורה לשמה, זוכה לדברים הרבה, ולא עוד, אלא שכל העולם כולו כדאי הוא לא. נקרא רע, אהוב, אוהב את המקום, אוהב את הבריות, משמח את המקום, משמח את הבריות, ומלבשתו ענווה ויראה, ומכשרתו להיות צדיק, חסיד, ישר ונאמן, ומרחקתו מן החטא, ומקרבתו ליד הזכות, ונהנים ממנו עצה ותושייה, בינה וגבורה, שנאמר, לי עצה ותושייה, אני בינה, לי גבורה, ונותנת לו מלכות וממשלה, וחיקור דין, ומגלין לו רזי תורה, ונעשה כמעיין המתגבר, וכנער שאינו פוסק, והבא צנוע, וארוך ערך רוח, ומוחל על עלבונו, ומגדולתו, ומרוממותו על כל המעשים.
A long one.
And also the great.
You wonder now why Judah the Prince was like, no, I'll definitely take a look at it. Maybe we'll make it into the cut. We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, this was like, yeah.
And he goes, tells Rameir, it was just too long. Sorry.
Yeah, the grammar here. I mean, it's difficult for me to know how to, not grammar, but like syntax, where to stop.
Yeah. Ironically, it seems like it's going to be easier to read in English.
Yeah. So the sages expounded in the language of the Mishnah. Blessed is he who chose them and their learning. Rabbi Meir would say, whoever studies Torah for Torah's sake alone merits many things, Not only that, but the creation of the entire world is worthwhile for him alone. He is called friend, beloved, lover of God, lover of humanity, rejoicer of God, rejoicer of humanity. The Torah enclothes him with humility and awe, makes him fit to be righteous, pious, correct, and faithful. Distances him from sin and brings him close to merit. From him, people enjoy counsel and wisdom, understanding and power, as is stated in Proverbs. Mine are the counsel and wisdom. I am understanding. Mine is power. The Torah grants him sovereignty, dominion,
Sovereignty.
sovereignty. I don't know where I got that from. Sovereignty, right?
It's
Dominion.
okay. I got tithing wrong when I was saying two things. It's okay.
Yeah. Dominion. Yeah. Each of us gets one. Dominion and jurisprudence. The Torah's secrets are revealed to him, and he becomes as an ever-increasing wellspring, as an unceasing river. He becomes modest, patient, and forgiving of insults. The Torah uplifts him and makes him greater than all creations.
Ooh, wow.
Nice.
Looks like it's worthwhile.
Yeah. Some perks.
Okay, so let's first start off with this interesting language of Shanu Chachamim Bilshon Mishnah. Well, the sages expounded in the language of the Mishnah. Blessed is he who chose them and their learning. Right? So off the bat, we're being told, like we said originally, that it's not part of the original tractate. Right? However, they want us, Rav Meir or Judah the Prince, putting these things in eventually. Well, not Judah the Prince, but when we compile these things eventually, we want to make sure that it's understood that this is also said in the same language of the Mishnah, which is the holy language, right? Because there's a sense you might look at this as being like, well, this is chapter 6. I know this is like the footnotes. So like, how seriously do I need to take this? And then it's being stressed again with the latter portion, which is that even though this is not actual Mishnayot, right? That first off, even though it's not Mishnah, we have to take it seriously. Like we see that these are written in the same way that the rabbi spoke inside the Mishnah, but God chose them and their teaching, and He also uses the word Mishnatam, right? Which is to let us know that, like we have in the Torah, where we clearly say that we should observe. It's called Asher Yerucha. We should observe all the teachings that the rabbis teach us, and we won't deviate left or right from what they tell us. So there's a sense which is we're reminding the reader that with the things you're reading right now, they might have not been compiled into this thing called the Mishnah. Nevertheless, this is still within the rubric of the rabbis that are teaching, and we should take these things, very, 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 very seriously as well. And Shabachar Bahem, them, in the context of all the rabbis we've just seen up until now, which we have given them all a name, and we try to over the last few months give some context to how they was behaving, because we wanted to say, aside from the fact that they were all geniuses, right?
Mavericks.
Mavericks. We wanted to say that they embodied, right, that these figures practiced what they preached, right? And that's why it's reinforcing the relevance of what they were saying, which is not only giving you some random stuff over here, but these rabbis that we know them by name, they actually embodied this kind of practice, right? So that's why it's just stressing that. And I think it's very nice that it's stressing that in such a manner. Into Rabbi Meir specifically, let's get into it. So Rabbi Meir tells us, right, Kol ha'osek b'Torah lishma. So let's just, what is this? Whoever studies Torah for Torah's sake alone, right? So obviously throughout history, many nations aimed for their children to look up to their heroic warriors or their rulers, right? Everyone wants to be Thor, everyone wants to be Hercules, and even like the scientists, right? The Medici family looking at Leonardo da Vinci, right? This is like we're very into him. Today, obviously, we're a far cry from that, right? Where you could see people like rappers or Taylor Swift. These are the people, or I would even say athletes, and that's not saying that it's not inspiring to see how David Goggins doesn't want to stop running, right? Like, I get that, like, it's very, very cool. However, in Judaism, we always are looking at the sages. We're looking at people that are trying to engage in Torah for Torah's sake, right? It's an individual that is not seeking worldly gains at all, right? We didn't talk about the rich guy. We didn't even talk about the smartest man in the world. We're talking about someone, an individual who is seeking to connect to the divine and is not looking for anything in return, right? Someone that is learning to uncover more wisdom, right? He wants to delve in deeper into the Talmud, into the Mishnah, and this is this never-ending study, as we've spoken about over the last 5 chapters, right? And he's consumed by this passion of learning, right? So that kind of study, right?
Yeah.
Which is there's an example that the rabbis give, which is someone that, even a thief, or someone that has, not a thief, someone that has his own interests, so to speak, he manages to get into the king's palace, right? And the first door he opens up, he's like, oh my God, there's so much gold over here. But as he sees there's more gold in every room, his desire to explore becomes more intense. It's less about like, just take the first room gold and walk out. He's like, I need to see more of these riches. I'm just interested in like, how deep does this go? So that would be an example of learning Torah for its own sake. Of course, we'll expand about this a little more, but this is very different than, getting the new Xbox or being on Forbes 500, right? That's not what we're looking for.
Yeah, it's kind of, actually, this is kind of an aside, so we don't need to explore this, but it's interesting. And I think I've noticed, and it's not something that I just noticed on my own. I'm sure it's a pattern, that a lot of these, when you say like Thor and athletes, for sure, we're never, it's just like, there was just a glamour attached to them. But I think in recent years, and more so, they've been collapsed into, or these stars are
compressed.
Are what?
Compressed?
Not compressed. It's like something is added to them, or collapsed, or compressed into also moral paragons. Like, there's so much, there's like, and in a way, it kind of like, it bothers me sometimes, because I think, oh, I just want to see like a sports team, right? But then on the other hand, I think, well, this guy's actually trying to like make things better in the world, But so in some way, there's something inspiring about it. But you try to hold people on a higher level, or they're trying to use their status now also in a more, we can call it divine way, right? Like a moral, kind of like above ground. But it's also something that's unfamiliar to most people, because it was never about that. A star was never a moral paragon, even though now it's becoming more and more so. I don't know if that's eventually a good move or not, but it's what's happening for sure.
Well, it's a good move because mitoch shelo lishma ba lishma, right? Because we're saying that, like, even though we didn't intend for this, obviously there's if the results are good, that's great. Yeah. And it's beautiful where you see someone, quote unquote, has a platform or has a voice, and then he feels like this sense of responsibility. Even that, the question is he doing those good things because he doesn't want to get canceled? Is he doing that because that's what he's being told to do? But like you said, LeBron James is not dunking because he eventually feels like, when I could get to that level of fame, I could then use that money to go, to help kids and make a wish, right? Mm-hmm. That wasn't the goal. However, the one who's studying Torah for Torah's sake alone, ideally is also embodying those behaviors. In that Torah, it means he has to take care of the poor and the widow, and he becomes sought after because of that, right? Then he might end up getting to a position where, guess what? I have a few extra shekels right now because people like me and wanted and this, like that, but that was never the goal.
Yeah.
The fact that you also mentioned the paragons, a good example of that there was a TV show like Supergirl and Green Arrow and Flash, and it was a few years ago that was going on. And in this show, basing it on the comics, they all get together, like in this whole mix of the world of Superman and Flash, they're all together. But they all have like these different paragons. And there's a whole thing about like, you're the paragon of this, and you could see, like, just like what you were explaining, where society's trying to attach these things right now, or like these comics never had it. They've been written for years.
Yeah.
Now, when it's being reiterated today in this modern culture, they're trying to sort of add these things to it. So I think that was a very relevant comment.
Yeah.
First of all, hello, Caspian C. In terms of building a fence around the Torah, is equating anger with murder and lust with adultery, the inner dimension of sin. Is that idea of building a fence around the Torah? Again, in terms of building a fence around the Torah, is equating anger with murder and lust with adultery, the inner dimensions of sin. Is that the idea of building a fence around the Torah? Okay, I understand what you're saying. I believe I understand what you're saying, which is when we equate those things where it's saying like anger is like murder, right? That is creating like a certain fence where she'd be like, I can't get angry because it's akin to murder. So in general, the fence is talking about the Torah says, don't do X. You take on X plus 1 because just to make sure you don't have that issue. So if my boundaries, if one is not supposed to have, for example, relations with a married woman, right? The fence would be don't talk to women, right? If you're married, try to avoid putting yourself in situations, as we spoke about in Pirkei Avot, al tarbeh sicha im ha'isha. And we broke that down. What does that mean? Don't speak in a lengthy manner to a woman. What does that mean, lengthy manner? What is the things you're talking about? So obviously we could get into that, but that would be more examples of fence. What you're saying as far as the terminology itself, does the terminology itself create a fence? And I would say yes. Psychologically, there's a sense where you have to take it. It's not to scare you, but it's you to realize the inner, like you're saying, the inner dimension of the sin, and that itself should try to warn you from going down that path. So I think that's also, Caspian, that was a good point. So thank you for participating, and we always gain from people that participate. Mikol melamdai hiskalti. Okay, so said Rav Meir, and we said that we spoke about a little what learning Torah for his own sake, and he says you obviously you merit many things, which we'll go through. Right. Mm-hmm. So the many things we're going to go through obviously are through the tough struggle that I'm dealing with. Right. Obviously there are gifts from God, but from a sense of how this happens from a bottom up sort of perspective. Right. Through my struggle, I could deal with my evil inclination. I could learn how to bend it or fully subdue it. Right. Or those negative traits I have on. Yeah. So this is really someone that's really going to try to embody all these good virtues, then they will also see merits from it. But let's go through what some of these merits are. Velo od, and not only does he get many things, before we go into the merits, kulo kedai hu lo. So a very intense sentence over here, but the creation of the entire world is worthwhile for him alone. Right. So I'm going to go through. I'm trying to think how to best go about this. It's also very apropos and sensitive with what Israel is going through right now. But basically what we're saying over here is that the world was worthy to be created for the sake of this Torah scholar, right? This person that's studying Torah for its own sake. And it is being sustained by his Torah study. Mm-hmm. Right. So you have to imagine like the scope of the statement we're saying over here. Right. So the earth, the animals, the plants, the heavens, the galaxies, right. The entire overwhelming creation is to serve the single Jew who's engrossed right now in the study of Talmud right now, or what we're doing right now. Everything's been sustained by this. Right. And there's the example. We might have said this earlier on, but Rav Hanina ben Dosa, who the rabbis say God said about him, or the divine voice said about him, that the whole world is sustained for him, for his sake. And however, ironically, the only thing he would eat throughout the whole week was like this one cherub, right? So you could see like, on one hand, this holy man that is fully immersed in Torah study, and he almost needs no sustenance and needs nothing from the world. On the flip side, he is providing for billions of people around the world, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a sense where when I just explain this, people will say, okay, Chezi, I could just sit in my room and do this all day, right? I'm doing everything. Your people are talking about, we have to be worried about recycling. Bro, I'm studying Torah in my house all day, and I'm keeping it all. I know Elon Musk is worrying about the atmosphere, getting to space. All he has to do is learn Torah. So I would say that the study of Torah ultimately means also embodying that Torah, and there's priorities, right? So in Israel right now, we have an issue, which is there's a war, and we have a tension with our ultra-Orthodox brothers. Jacob, I'm sure, is going to have issues with this, but they feel like they are designated as the tribe of Levite, metaphorically speaking, because they're not all Levites, and the Levites historically were exempt from many things, and their focus was to teach and learn Torah. However, there is a war. There are commandments about war, how you're supposed to defend your fellow man. Even the Levites themselves are not exempt from specific kind of wars. And the idea would be is there are priorities. Of course, the study of Torah is amazing and enriching and sustains the world in the sense where if you behave properly, you are affecting your community, your neighbor, on and on and on it goes, right? So that allows us to get to that point where we affect the whole world. Having said that, if an atom bomb falls, I don't really have a world so much to maintain. So
right.
there's a sense where,
makes me think about two things, like in terms of like the knowing or to study Torah. I mean, we can maybe equate it with knowing a little bit to fit it into what I'm going to say. In terms of knowing something and understanding it might be more than studying it, right? It'd be embodying it, like what you said. Like you have to, if you learn about a certain mitzvah, or you want to be able to embody it, and embodying it will actually teach you more about it than just reading through it. And then also the other thing is, which you kind of alluded to it with the atom bomb, in terms of we need to make sure that we can cultivate the space where we can do that, right? So it makes me think of like a very simple image of somebody sitting in their room learning Torah, and the window is open and the breeze is coming in and it's getting really, really cold, right? If they keep the window open, at the end they're gonna get a cold, right? And when they're gonna go cold, they won't be able to study. So they need to get up, close the window, and then continue studying. So in a very small way, that's, I think, maybe alludes to the fact that sometimes you need to stop and do something else in order to allow yourself to be more sustainable. That's kind of like my thoughts.
I agree, and I appreciate that. So, priorities. There's a hierarchy of also certain things, how things also have to manifest at the end of the day. And there's things that also would happen naturally, right? Which is like, if you're involved in Torah study, then you realize that it makes sense to have a family. If you're going to have a family, you have to realize you have to teach your kid. Like, saying all those elements have to happen. And then you have to realize, like, you at some point you're leaving the room, and in reality, we could take the Israelite away from Sinai, but we can't take Sinai away from us, within us inside, right? It goes with us wherever we go. That voice is still echoing.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. So that was a very good merit, right? The whole world was created for you. That's a very nice one. Nikra re'a ehov ohev et hamakom ohev et habriot mesamech et hamakom. We'll continue going through. So he's called a friend, beloved, lover of God, lover of humanity, rejoicer of God, rejoicer of humanity. So let's try to dive into some of these. Okay, so re'a. It says, by the way, for anyone seeing this, re'a, this word, reish ayin, also looks like ra, which means
that's
like
how
bad,
I so.
But it means re'a, like a friend, right? So this is a different word, a companion. I was just listening to a Mark Cohen song, True Companion. So this is a companion that's on the life journey with you, right? The idea is that we are a partner together with God, right? We've spoken about many times about how God lets and wants Adam to name the animals, right? And we'll also learn from there in a certain sense, even the oral Torah or the classic story of Achnai's oven, right? Lo b'shamayim. All these indicate to the relationship God wants to have together with us, right? Kedoshim to you, ki kadosh ani. Be holy because I am holy, right? Whatever that word means. That's for a different conversation. But the idea is that he's very much interested in a conversation with us, right? And well, we don't have to get into that. Okay. So that would be considered a re'ah, right? A friend, but in this sense, it's more than just like a friend that you borrow milk from. It's your companion, someone that you're having a partnership with. Now we have ehuv, right, which is a beloved. So we have to ask, like, what's the difference also between the friend partner and the beloved, right? So generally speaking, a friend or a companion, that's a connection that has like a common denominator, right? And we're achieving like a specific goal together. And there's also they have their shared goal, and a lover or a beloved is a bond that doesn't really have an external adhesive binding them together. It's a state of love that is really not depending on anything, and it never really ceases, right? So a partner still has something that he's trying to do together with the other partner, right? It's you could say
conditional.
Well, you could have friendship has an advantage over love because it's always reciprocal, right? Because we want to get to the shared goal. I need to do, you need to do, I need to do. And someone that is just like beloved, right? I didn't necessarily do anything to earn this love. Like my son is just he didn't do anything special. He's just being loved by me. He's my beloved because I love him. And if there was like a partnership there, right? There's a sense which is this is investment and effort put inside, right? Yeah. So that's why like that's also cultivated. However, with God, we're saying we're getting the best of both worlds. There's a sense of I'm trying to build and do together with you. And at the same time, you also have this general umbrella of being God's beloved as well, which is, and this is something that we're doing together, and I'm loving you regardless, right? So there's, and it's true that God is always giving to us. Yes, when we learn the Torah, we are also sustaining the world. So in that sense, we're also being reciprocal. But generally speaking, those are the two elements that we could see and the differences we could see between love and companionship. I don't know if you want to check your magic book or add any comments.
No. It just has stories from now on. It just has like anecdotes, but no, it doesn't have like a specific teaching.
Okay. Ohev et hamakom. Lover of God, right? We say hamakom is God, right? So what does that mean? He is a lover of God. And so this is very much like the essence of learning for its own sake. We're not learning for its own sake because I love looking at the Hebrew letters. I'm learning it because it's to fulfill God's will, right? And him manifesting through the Torah and learning through the Torah, right? So also when I study more, that's like a way for me to reach higher levels of understanding God and then loving him because of this as well, right? There's a sense also where ahava in even though I'm not Mr. Gematria, right? The mathematical value of ahava is 13, and echad is also 13, right? So I believe you might have that in your book, but I believe there's
one with Torah.
Which rabbi mentions that, but there's a sense where also loving God, love and God are really one, ultimately speaking, even from a numerical value sense. Now, but the really question would be, how does one love God? Yes, you could say I could learn Torah. How do I love God? How do I connect with him? Right. So as we have our as the Torah commands us, lehava et Hashem Elokecha lalechet b'drachav v'lidbaka bo, right? To love God and walk in his ways and cling to him, right? So this is walking in his ways is how that happens. So it's to cling to God's attributes and to, in a certain sense, grasp some of his wisdom by learning his Torah, right? I could start getting towards the love of God and start achieving that, right? But that requires both to mimic his attributes and try to understand and grasp him and understand him. And of course, that requires Torah study. However, again, this has to be embodied. I think I'm going to mention it like many times over here because this is talking about, again, how the love of Torah, and it would seem that just the study of the Torah itself is enough. But ultimately, it has to manifest in reality.
I'm trying to think if I have anything to say to that. No, the only thing that comes up is such how weird of a concept it is. Maybe it didn't used to be weird. Now it's weird. Maybe now it's less for me, but of having this personal relationship with the makom. The makom is really the best the best name for this for God here specifically, because it's such a it's such a weird concept, I think, to explain to people of how of I can maybe explain it in a utilitarian way sometimes, and it helps me also of like having some kind of treating the world as an entity, right? Treating or like having a personal relationship with the world and the creator. But I'm trying to speak about something that's other than God to get there. But I'm just thinking about how weird of it for me. It's such a weird concept to have that. It's like it's not intuitive at all in a way.
When I think of, as you're saying that, when I think of the Hovet HaMakom, in the Hamakom as the place, right? I also think about being grounded, or in a certain sense, also on a much lower level, even loving yourself, not from like an egotistical point of view, but being aware of yourself, like from a psychological point of view, being aware, okay with yourself, understanding who you are and how you think about the things and how you relate to the world. I think those lead towards that kind of place. I mean, like the philosopher, in a certain sense, is doing that. Right. I'm saying, and when Maimonides talks about how the closest thing to a prophet was, let's say, that a human could get was, let's say, Aristotle, right? When he's talking about how, and the idea was he is immersed in knowing himself, and because of that, knowing everything around him,
right?
Everything he deduces from that. So that you could say, like, sort of that's like the long route, right? Because you could be like, God just commanding you, love me. But in a sense, studying the Torah would be, and if we say that everything's inside the Torah, and like we mentioned in a few chapters ago, how with the qualifications I gave at the time, but how I could study about geometry and chemistry and all these things that are inside over there. So that is really giving you like as we said, even in this mission, the more I learn, right, the more I get to see God's glory in a certain, and that's why I start loving him. So you're right that just waking up one day and just deciding I love God, right? That, right now I'm indoctrinating my children. Their relationship is not like, and it starts becoming natural, right? But when I tell my youngest daughter, when I sing little songs, she's just singing little songs, right? There's nothing there right now. As my child gets older and he has to start realizing, like, okay, bad things are happening, but constantly moving back towards that understanding he has. So
yeah, I don't think that it goes away. This is my getting to other places, but I mean, I don't know. So you can stop me, but I don't think this feeling goes away, and maybe I can talk personally. Like, I don't think that the personal relationship necessarily goes away. Like, we can say that it's intuitive, and also, I mean, like from the Torah itself, and definitely the Hasidic, like the Tanya would speak about how this is something that is in the essence of us, but it might take you speak about it in other terms if you are not constantly aware of it. So it makes me think about, like, sometimes there are eulogies about people, and it says about them how they loved life. There are people that just love life, and I feel like those are the people that also like a lover of God, of the makom. A makom is the place, is life. It's like all feels to me like that is a way to say that without. But then in a way, I do feel like there is a special thing about, again, having a more specific or more.
this connects to. Sorry, I was going to say this connects to Paul's God number one, God number two.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
there's a relationship with the Arenic, and there's a relationship with the agentic, and it's very difficult to just assume the relationship with the agent, right? With God talking to me and loves me personally.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I get into it at the beginning is maybe this helped me at the beginning too. even though now it's a little bit more intuitive for me, is like to think about it as like, this is an affordance that I'm taking on. Like it's an affordance in terms of like using acting as if the world is an agent, or there is an agent that is somehow synonymous with the world and its direction.
Mm-hmm.
An affordance that I allow for myself in order to have a better relationship with the world and its inhabitants.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it affordance, meaning it makes it easier for me, and it optimizes my experience, with the world, and that's why I will allow myself to act as if that is true.
I mean, that's also very Jordan Peterson's "I act as if God exists," right?
Right. I mean, that was my way into it, but I'm just saying that now, again, I can speak, maybe it kind of feels more intuitive, but still, especially as I talk to other people, this is such a weird thing to, it feels such a weird thing to, it feels so weird, but in some way it's also very familiar because people just do it. They just call it in different ways. It's not this very specific way, which is part of, I think, why people are hesitant about it. But yeah.
And right, you just have to frame it as a psychotechnology, and then I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
Is there an app for that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, that was good. Hence, I didn't stop you. Okay, so we said he's a lover of God. He's also a lover of humanity. So that's also nice. Ohevet habriot, right? So when a person, right, he decides that he's like abandoning the worldly desires that he wants, and he's not envious anymore of people, and he's not lustful anymore of people, and he's not pursuing money, or there's not ego trips that he's trying to achieve, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's ultimately removing the barriers between him and like other people.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why that would lead to, that kind of mindset leads to living in peace, brotherhood, very much kumbaya, and without a competition, with that kind of mindset. And generally speaking, professionals usually have a sense of animosity towards their competition, right? There's a sense of like a famine mentality. I need to win. I got to get it. Like if I'm a designer and someone's using a different designer, like there's like a tension. That's not the case. You might have witnessed this already by now. That's not the case with Torah study. Like the rabbi doesn't get upset if like a really good Torah student comes into the study hall and starts learning. He doesn't feel like he's taking my Torah away, or like he's using up my Torah, or like I won't have a chance. So ultimately it's the contrary. Like you're just saying you are ultimately going to enhance and glorify the Torah together with me. Yeah. So that kind of mindset and studying the Torah properly should lead to you being a lover of all humanity. And by being a lover of all humanity, right, he becomes a rejoicer of God and a rejoicer of humanity. So he's mesamech tamakom, mesamech tabriya, right? So he said that he loves those people, but by doing that, he also now there's an effect, right? So God is rejoicing, and the people, the creations around him are rejoicing as well. So obviously, if I am participating and embodying in Torah study and Torah manifestation and embodiment, I am causing God joy, right? But now we understand that happiness and sadness are metaphorical, so to speak, when we're just discussing God, and we have to realize that when there's peace in the world, right? That would be a good example of God being happy. We could see another example of this when there's this spooky verse in Psalms, mm-hmm, where God is playing with the Leviathan, and there's also the famous Leviathan that we are told that we will create a sukkah out of its skin, and the righteous will eat inside this tent that we built from it. But the Leviathan, which is also a very deep concept, but just to scratch the surface, we're talking about a concept of chaos, right? Mm-hmm. And the idea that God is playing with him is also a sense where, in proper orientation, what seems chaos to us is ultimately also, if done properly, desired by God, right? Mm-hmm. And us eating eventually in in the days of the Messiah comes, and the day and the world to come, when we're eating in this tent, so to speak, we've conquered chaos and we're aligned together properly with it. So here too, if we're living in a world of peace, and because of the way we're behaving, and like we said earlier, I'm loving humanity, and because of that we could all live together, seemingly that is the God's joy that is revealed in the world, if we could ever hopefully one day get to that place. Now, of course, there's also what we mentioned, I think 2 missionaries ago or 3 missionaries ago, about going and setting an example and going to the study hall even if you don't have to go. So here too, I make the humanity and the creations happy by them seeing me as a personal example, come follow in the path of Torah, embody the path of Torah. And this, of course, spreads light of Torah and brings joy to other people.
Yep.
You have like a face of like you're disagreeing with that, or?
No. It's a face of contemplation.
I gotcha. Okay. Rejoice in humanity. The Torah enclosed him with humanity and awe. I saw this movie with Daniel Day-Lewis, Lincoln, and he has a speech about like how I'm the president of the United States and I'm enclosed with immense power. It's a very enclosed just sounds like nicer than umel bashto. I don't know. But okay, so they enclose him with humility and mabashto anava ve'yirah, right? So how do we close? By studying Torah, how do we get closed by these virtues, right? So the Torah lets us know with regards to Moses, right, that he was anav michol adam, right? That he was very, very humble, and we have to ask, how did he reach this level of humility, right? So because he achieved such a great understanding of God, greater than any other person, right? He comprehended things that no other prophet could comprehend or reach, right? That level. So such a profound understanding of God makes Moses humble. That gives him humility. So the one who studies Torah for its own sake, right? And again, he is attaining all these lofty ideas, and because of that, he's starting to recognize God's wisdom. He's starting to see more of God, so to speak, through the world as he learns more and more of this information. And by the way, akin to, a scientist, the deeper he gets into his field, he can start looking at the world through that matrix right now and start seeing like how those things happen. So if you're looking at the world through the Torah matrix, you start realizing God's greatness ultimately, and you start recognizing how minimal our actions are compared to God. Now, I would say that there's a shortcut to this that is also a very apropos conversation in today's culture, which is LSD, MDMA. When people are having those profound experiences, they come back feeling, humbled, grateful for what's going on around them. So there's a sense where if you could get reality, like if you get the mask off and you get smacked in the face with reality, it's overwhelming in the most beautiful way, so to speak.
Yeah. I think also the language of Tanya and Chabad is useful here because it talks about the clothing of the soul. If I get it right, but it talks about 3 different levushim, the clothing, which are the thought, speech, and action. So we can also see it of how when you love Torah and you engage with it, you start to think, expressing yourself like the Torah, or thinking in the values and the wisdom of Torah, and doing those actions. So they become the clothes of
the soul, levushei hanefesh.
Yeah.
Or malbushei hanefesh. Yeah.
Malbushei hanefesh. Yeah.
That's good. Next time, I'm willing to accept the Tanya reference as long as you're dropping Pirkei Avot at Tanya. No,
I think I dropped. And now that I'm thinking, it would be cool if we would do a mix-up where
a joint one.
A joint one also like a guest star or a
guest star.
Jacob. All those NYPD shows you can have. Chezi teaches Tanya and Jacob teaches Pirkei Avot.
Jacob is always welcome. He needs not ask permission. Where were we? We were in
ענווה ויראה.
Oh, and Yivara, right? Okay, so we were saying MMA, MDMA, LSD, right? That's just like a recent phenomenon of how we could see, like, a little glimpse of that. But ultimately, humility, once I've achieved humility, right, I realized how small I am. That also leads to fear of God. I would say fear. Well, here it says, awe is better. Awe of God, right? So here too, this is not like, we're not talking about the fear or the awe of sin, right? But I'm in awe of how magnificent God is ultimately. And you and I have mentioned this in the past with regards to Descartes' understanding of cogito ergo sum, right? I think, therefore I am. Yeah. And we said there's hubris there. We're saying it's just like, it starts with an I, right? I think, so I'm aware of myself, and that's why I exist.
It kind of reminds me of modani, which is also the first word is.
Well, it's not, the second word is ani. The first word is,
the first word is the think, and the second one is I.
Correct, exactly. The first thing is the think, exactly what we said. So here the think comes in when I wake up in the morning. Before the word comes out of my mouth, I realized I did a little cogito ergo sum. I realized for a second that there's a me, but then I realized it's me in contrast to the magnificence of the universe. And then automatically I become humble. And once I become humble, I start with, first of all, thank you. Then I, right? So I think this is a beautiful example of how being humble also leads to being or showing or having humility increases the sense of awe, and both of them work off each other very, very nicely as well. ומחשרתו להיות צדיק, חסיד, ישר ונאמן, right? Makes him fit to be righteous, pious, correct, and faithful. Okay, so many words over here. Makes him fit. Okay, so I would use the word machsharato to, well, there's two ways of understanding it. One would be equips him, right? It is preparing him in a certain sense for it to be worthy for these lofty virtues. But in Hebrew, machsharato also comes from the word kosher. So it's also purifying. It's getting rid of the evil inside of him as well. So it doesn't only get him ready, but it also, the act itself is a certain sense of purification.
Yeah, it makes me think of in a less biblical way, but like if I want to play soccer, I need to likanes lekosher. I need to get into shape, which is also kind of like in modern Hebrew, you can like getting into shape is to get into kosher. So it's really something that you need to prepare yourself in order to do that. Really, like you said, like the purifying of yourself in order to actually be able to play a game without killing yourself.
Now we get hit again with these two terms like we had earlier. And here we have righteous and pious, right? So righteous would be, in this sense, overcoming the evil inclination and acting according to the Torah demands. The chassid, the pious one, is going beyond the letter of the law, right? He's doing more than is required by the halachic boundaries. We see in the Gemara there's chassidim. We spoke about in the past, alluded to a little, how there could have been some sort of cross-pollination between the chassids and the Essenes as well, which also took on more things as well. So there's this mode of being a chassid. Now we're saying over here that he is correct and faithful, right? So what does that mean, being correct and being faithful? So these are like definitions of their righteousness and their piety, so to speak, right? So these virtues, they guide their path, and they walk correct, or they walk straight, and they walk faithfully in their path without deviating, right? So these are two elements that could be used on the righteous and on the pious, one being faithful, one being straight.
Right.
And there's a sense also where in Jewish history, you've had that once someone acts this way, and this goes back to being an example, once someone is righteous or a pious, and because of that he's acting straight or acting faithful, he gets noticed, he gets seen. Right. There's, like we've seen with Doeg the Adomi, or Doeg the Adamite, and Achitophel, right? They were great Torah scholars, and they ultimately fell for sins. We spoke about Jeroboam, right, who was extremely wise and also was led astray. We even have Yochanan Kohen Gadol, the high priest, that was served for 80 years as the high priest, but ultimately becomes part of the Sadducees. And you have to ask, like, how did this happen? So this happens, or what we are taught to believe that this happens, is because they did not learn Torah for its own sake. At some point, biases came in, ego came in, and that had led them astray.
Right. Al tamin b'atzecha ad sof yom motcha.
Exactly. I did a snap and a point, but I see my camera miss me. So exactly, right?
Yeah. Don't in a crude way. I mean, it sounds harsh, but yeah, don't believe in yourself until the end of your
or
day.
Have realistic expectations.
Right. No, or know yourself, know your faults, know your biases, know your boundaries.
We spoke about a few Mishnayot ago about we were using different examples of animals, right? The eagle and the lion and the tiger, but we also said be like the deer who runs, that even though he's running away, he always looks back because he's aware that evil is always lurking, right? So even if you're doing fantastic, still it's like don't believe in yourself, but be aware of reality and be cognizant of where you are and what could actually happen to you.
Yeah.
Be so sure of yourself.
I think that's a very good personal. I feel like I haven't connected it to my own experience, but that is also kind of like a strong principle that helps me deal with things in my life, where I know, even though I've like succeeded in something, I always know there is like this is a place where I need to be proactive or make sure that it doesn't.
Could you scroll down a little with the screen if you don't mind, with the Pirkei Avot? Okay, we are Chasid Neshama Eman. Okay, Marchakato min hachet umekarvato lidei zchut. Where is it? Here we go. Distances him from sin and brings him closer to merit. One of the merits is that he gets closer to merits. You see, like, they're doubling up over here. I mean, we could even say this. We just said earlier, right? We should ask. We just said earlier that I merit being righteous and being pious, and I'm walking correct, and I'm being faithful. So if I'm doing all those things, why do they also need to tell me that they're going to distance me from sin and bring me closer to merit? Didn't we just say, like, I did it? I got to that point. Yeah. So this goes back to what we just said a second ago, which is I'm still going to face pitfalls in my life, and I could still have errors of judgment, and I could still have lack of knowledge. Right? Being pious or being righteous didn't mean I know everything in the world, right? Yeah. Now, maintaining Torah for its own sake also gives me seemingly special divine assistance, right? So I'm being helped from God to avoid the stumbling blocks along the way. And obviously the Talmud gives different examples of this. A famous one is where the rabbis at that time never brought a sin offering to the temple because they were so on point, so to speak, where, this is an example of not only were they righteous and pious, but also they were getting assistance from God, which they weren't stumbling. Right. And in this case, in this sense, it's almost like the Torah is like a mikvah, a ritual bath, right? Which is like, if you immerse yourself inside the Torah, even if you transgress, eventually it will wipe your slate clean. And as we say, many waters can't quench the love. But when you are studying for Torah for its own sake, and you have this loving relationship with God, you could be assured that also, the waters of the world or the troubles of the world won't be able to quench that relationship, that love, and you'll be protected from them.
Yeah.
Again, these are things that in general, I don't know if someone there's a seriousness someone should take this in, but that doesn't mean like if I'm now holding a Torah book and I'm studying, I could jump off a roof right now and gravity doesn't work, right? Like it will end badly, right? So again, this all has to happen with a sense of hierarchy, priorities, how I'm studying these things. Okay, going on. Right? And from him, people enjoy counsel and wisdom, understanding and power, as it is stated, mine are counsel and wisdom, and I am understanding, mine is power. Shene'emar li etza v'tushiya, ani bina li gvura. Wow. Okay. Right. So, how did exactly they say this in Hebrew? Mine is counsel and mine is wisdom. Okay. So counsel or advice would be to correctly assess a situation and know how to address it. We spoke about these things also earlier about like how a student knows how to answer his teacher. So that would be what we would call counsel. Wisdom itself is knowing how to implement advice into action, right? Which is like one thing I tell you, I think you should do X. B, I would tell you how you actually follow through with X, right? So it's seeing a step further. It's having a little more understanding of what's going on. Now we say, I am understanding, right? So what is understanding? Which is also like a result of wisdom that we just said about, but this one's like more complex, which is in Hebrew, it's lahavin davar mitoch davar, deducing one thing from another, right? So like, not only did I understand the situation and how to address it, and I know how to take an idea into action, but I also know how to derive things from one thing to another, which is starting to sort of read the whole map in front of you once you could start making those connections.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I also have power or strength, right? So this is the power or the strength. I had the wisdom. I realized all those things, but now I also have the wherewithal to actually stand strong against the evil inclinations or stand strong and do the right thing, right? Because I could be as brilliant as I want, but even if I realize that going into this room ultimately, means there's going to be a 80% chance that I'm going to transgress, but then I go inside, then it didn't really help me that I was so smart, right? It only helps me if I also have, it's coupled with power, self-control, to be able to maintain yourself and the proper behavior, right?
Right. Now, to be able to survey the situation properly and understand what you need to do. And then having for me, the tushia also speaks to that in terms of having the wherewithal and power to actually execute on it. Like, do it, embody it.
Exactly. Do it, embody it. Right. So again, this would be, this is really trying to give someone like an exoskeleton, right? So they can realize how to detect issues, see what something's going wrong, know when to embody these things. So obviously, again, this is not to be mistaken for if I opened up the scroll and I studied right now, suddenly I become like a brilliant man. Rather, for years and years of Torah study, that would give me a mode of thinking, which is an extremely powerful mode of thinking. It allows me to cut through many, 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 many things. And even the study of Talmud and that kind of logical thinking allows one to do that. Okay. As far as this this verse from Proverbs, from Mishlei, it's an interesting verse, and it ends over here with saying "V'notenet lo malchut memshela v'chikui din," and in Hebrew, in English, it's the Torah grants him sovereignty, dominion, and jurisprudence. Right?
Yeah.
Now, here you could see in history many Jews, rabbis, were used as counsels or gave advice to many kings. Or we had the king Yanai, we had who took advice from Shimon HaTzadik. You had King Herod who spoke to Baba Ben Buta. We spoke about earlier about Judah the Prince and Marcus Aurelius, even though that relationship's a little different. You have Hadrian. You have many other rabbis. They have Barbanel, obviously, who was in Portugal. So you have all these different people who, because of who they were and how they were manifesting, they were used as counsel because they were seen as wise and strong, and they had the wherewithal to do those things. And you could be like, it's novel because they were Jewish, and it was novel because of the tensions around that, right? All throughout those times, the Jews are not being loved and celebrated. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, the king himself is saying, no, I want you in. And sometimes maybe that specific Jew is getting the benefits and others aren't. Nevertheless, he recognized the wisdom there and wanted to bring it close to him.
Yeah.
Right. So that is something that we see at the end of the day. And obviously, if one wants to be a ruler, it's very understandable why you'd want to have wisdom, why you'd want to have foresight. Obviously, we hope our leaders today could have that. So far, between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, I don't know about this verse. I don't know how much it relates to them in this sense. Mm-hmm. Now, it's also interesting here that we were talking earlier about being humble. And now we're also saying, but suddenly you're telling me I'm going to be the king. I'm going to be the ruler. People are listening to me. So like we've said this in the past, it's all how it's being done. Obviously, if someone has reached this level and he's this righteous person, we want to believe that he's not going to transgress at that level. We spoke about how there's the external pressures from the community, which is like he knows himself he can't fail because the amount of pressure that there is, a social pressure, because everyone sees him as his great leader already. So he's also going to want to stay in that position as well. So it's also important to remember that.
Yeah.
Okay. Umegalin lo razei Torah, right? The Torah secrets are revealed to him. Okay. So what are these Torah secrets? There's many different aspects of these Torah secrets, but ultimately, when King David says Gal enai be'avita niflod b'Torah techa, right, which is like let my eyes see your beautiful wisdom. There's a sense again where studying the Torah opens up your eyes to deep secrets, which today we're fortunate where not all these things are secrets necessarily. But I'm going to use the example of Jung, right, at the end of his book, saying that all the things I wrote about and all this psychological architecture that I built was already seen and predated by the great Chassid masters, right? And to a certain sense, that would be an example of it took thousands of years and years for like science to come and say like, you know what, these values we're actually teaching is, you know, what we call today science in a certain aspect. So here too, if deep Torah study could lead you to great insights. And you see this now, if Jordan Peterson gets on stage and has a Bible study, that's a perfect example of ultimately the conversation within Jordan Peterson and John Vervaeke is showing you that the Torah always had these wisdoms, these secrets to share. However, we need to keep our ears and eyes open to these things. And that's how we ask God, V'har'er enenu b'Toratecha, right? Illuminate our eyes with your Torah. Because we want to be able to see more clearly, see through it. There is a who tells this story? When the Arizal, famous Kabbalist, a famous Mikubal, when he would sleep on Shabbat afternoon, maybe Jacob knows the story better. I can't remember also what friend's house he was at, but he would sleep and his friends saw him whispering, mumbling. And when he woke up, the Ari asked him, did you hear me mumbling? Did you hear me saying things?
Yeah.
And the guy asked, like, what was that? He said, well, when I fall asleep, my soul ascended into the heavenly academy, the Yeshiva Shel Mala, seminary academy, Yeshiva Shel Mala, and the angels over there welcomed me and they allowed me to attend and study with them. But that when I'm studying with them in that subconscious level, those are the whispers that come out. They come out as a whisper. But in his sense, he was saying that is the place where I learned the Torah. Now, that might have been happening on one level. I would just say that there's a sense when someone is fully immersed in his field, there's a sense that even when he's sleeping, even in the astral plane, there's still studying going on, right? He manages to still make do and study even while he's sleeping. He's still getting to learn stuff. So that it would be great if I had that during high school when I was studying for tests. It would be very great to have. ונעשה כמעיין המתגבר וכנהר שאינו פוסק. And he becomes as an ever-increasing wellspring and as an unceasing river. Beautiful words being used over here, an example being used over here. So obviously the Torah, we've spoken about many times, it's like a living tree, it's like a pond, it's like a river. It's also like water, and you become never-ending, vigorous. We spoke about how the Torah also has these great rabbis that constantly more and more new ideas, innovating new Torah novelties into the world. And this happens when you're constantly dealing with it. You could get to new interpretations, new flow states, and that is a beautiful, beautiful place to be, of course. And it's not only that it's a river that becomes, again, like what's the exact determination in English? That it's an
unceasing river.
No, ever increasing. It's also unceasing, right? So it's getting bigger and it doesn't stop. Those are two other stuff.
Right, it's constant and increasing, right?
Yeah. Correct, exactly. So you have it on in both levels, so to speak.
Yeah, right? I actually wanted to ask you, like, what's the difference here? But yeah, that's a good. Makes me also think about like.
Right, and then it's the waters reach far, so to speak. Also, so it's not only that it's, you could say it's never I increase. And it doesn't stop, but you could be like, great, that works for you. But by an unceasing river, it's in a sense where like you're having these waves, these massive nonstop waves, and that is enough to cover a whole community. This would be the positive sense of a tsunami, right? Which is it's not stopping and it's fully overtaking the whole community in a certain sense, which is it allows Torah to be washing over the whole world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think also from like a personal perspective, like being consistent is something that's very useful, and always trying to challenge yourself, obviously in a healthy way, is also a very important aspect. Like you can be consistent, but not challenge yourself enough, and then maybe you get bored. Like challenge yourself, but you're not consistent, and then you forget about it. You move into other things. You're not, you're sporadic. So yeah.
I just see right now that I don't know. I guess someone was banned.
Yeah,
and their comments were removed.
That was me. That was not comments that were worthy of anything.
I got you. Okay, he wasn't trying to get to like deep Torah. You're saying
no.
Okay. I was also, there's another explanation also, which is the wellspring is someone that's near you, right? Because that's a spring that you have to go to. So that's like having an effect on the community. The river is eventually the people that are more distant, right? Eventually those waters from the wellspring that are going to fall over the floor onto the ground. And because it's unceasing, it also turns into a river that reaches everywhere. So it starts with you, which is okay that like it starts with you because you're you, but ultimately it moves on. צנוע וערך רוח הוא מוחל על עלבונו ומגדלותו ומרוממותו על כל המעשים. He becomes modest, patient, and forgiving of insults. The Torah uplifts him and he makes him greater than all creations. Right? So obviously being humble is, we obviously are very aware of, what that means is what's required from us. We were just talking about, or being modest, right? So even if you get to this level of the secrets of the Torah, and you become the overflowing water spring and the unceasing river, nevertheless, you have to be modest, right? So this is like a little pause, a little intermission in the middle, being like, you just gained like 17-9, points in this game. So just slow your roll for a second and realize like you got to be modest, right? And this goes back to what we were saying earlier about Moses. And what we said earlier about we closed ourselves in humility, right? La bishobet tzniut, right? So it's again, it's a re-emphasize of humility, over here, because we're really talking about how great you are. And we even end with this line saying greater than all creations, right? But also that it was happening within the context of, slow your roll and know your place. Ultimately, a great example of this would be the first tablets, right? 40 days, 40 nights, God, Moses is learning, they come down, there's the whole light show, the smoke, the fire, they did the whole 9 yards. They get shattered because there was a haughtiness around, the people weren't ready for it. They didn't fully understand what they wanted. They completely missed the mark with regards to the golden calf. And then we get the second tablet, which are it's a lot quiet. It's a lot more quiet, right? We don't have all the craziness going on, the light show. It's a lot more modest, and they stay intact. And there's a sense which is like, sometimes if you fly too close to the sun, like Icarus, ultimately your wings end up melting, right? Yeah. So it's better than stay a little lower down and manage to fly or float for years and years to come. Okay.
So that's modest, patient and forgiving, and we touched on those, like that. Forgiving especially is like
No, we didn't touch on that yet.
Okay.
We were just talking about the modesty.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure.
All right. So then in Hebrew, the erech ruach is patient, right? Not long-winded, but okay, fine. I got you. Patient and forgiving of insults. Okay, so there's very much like a seemingly turning the other cheek, sort of alluding to over here, right? So you have to be able to overlook ultimately your personal grievances. And this also has to do with modesty, right? This is even part of modesty, is to realize to not become angry, to forgive different insults, even if you're hearing people talking about you at the end of the day. And then we have to deal with this all the time. And these are also the qualities that like a Torah scholar would obviously need, right? Yeah. And if you're going to have these Torah secrets and you're going to be this river, you're obviously going to attract attention as well, right? This is something that you're going to have to just deal with. And if you become by the attention, I mean, not that people are just ripping on you, look at this guy, he's so great. Rather, now I have tons of students.
Right. Advice, like we said before, like counsel.
Correct. So everyone's coming to me right now and asking me, and they're like, oh, dude, you are totally like a vigorous spring, or you are like, you're never ceasing. And that means I can never stop asking you questions. So then you could clearly, as we see with Jethro telling Moses, ultimately, navol tibo, ultimately you will welt, right? You can't handle this. Now, it was Moses, so he can handle whatever he wants to handle. But the idea was that this system's not going to work out. And Moses was the most humble, right? So here too, we're saying like, now once you become to this person, you have to make sure that you are chachamim hizeru b'divrechem. All the things we were just studying right now. You got to be patient. You got to be understanding. You got to realize to the student that's talking to you which student it is. All the things we were just talking about have to be deployed when you're doing these things ultimately, right? So, when you are also an unceasing river, right? So, and I'm affecting everyone. So like going back to the wellspring, that's in my close vicinity. So those are the good students. I need to be patient with them. Yeah. When it's the river, I'm going to be getting everyone. And then I also have to realize there's going to be people that are a little more riffraff, and they're going to maybe even be insulting. And for them, I have to be able to forgive their insults. I have to realize that once my reach is so large, I can't take everything that someone says so seriously. And this is very akin to also once you become very popular, online or on Twitter, right? Yeah. So like, this one guy wrote a bad comment. Like, okay, you can't take that so seriously right now. You have to realize like where you are and how to take these things seriously. And ultimately, these are things that we'd also want to see in our leaders, right? Knowing how to handle these kind of pressures. Yeah. And I believe, lastly, we have this this wild statement about the Torah uplifts him and makes him greater than all the creations. So I would say that making than all the creations is in Hebrew, it's masim. It's also all actions. Yeah. Okay. So it's all the things that you're doing. And we're living in a world of action, ultimately speaking. And everything that we live in this world is very much defined by physical form, right? But when we are engaging in Torah for its own sake, and we don't have this interest necessarily of this world of like of the material things, I could transcend that place, and then I could in that time of learning, I'm not bounded by space and time. And that's the time when you want to be like the eagle, right? I want to remove myself from this reality, so to speak, so I can reach the highest heights, right? At the same time, I also have to be the deer, right? So these are things that are all these things that are happening together.
Yeah.
And the conduct and the contact with someone like this sometimes could feel like it's miraculous, right? Once I'm dealing with someone that has already reached this level and does actually, like these great rabbis or these great sages, there's a sense where I'm interacting with someone that is playing a different game, so to speak, right? He is interacting with the world a little differently as well. So we also feel that as people when we see someone get to this level.
Yeah, I think it's also from the perspective, I mean, you kind of touched on it, or perspective of uplifting, or makes his, if you use the interpretation of calling it not creations but actions, makes his actions greater. It's connecting your actions when you let your actions be influenced by the highest thing, then your actions become uplifted. They're all for the sake of a higher thing. And it's
there's also a sense, hey, what's going on, CW? I hope you're doing well and the family's doing well. There's a sense also when we say that it makes him greater than all creations, or like I said, greater than actions, and like the physical actions, which is he has reached Zen, right? This person, aside from the divine gifts that God is giving him and the support that God is giving him, this person throughout this whole journey has managed to transcend, right? And he's no longer focused on the material and the physical. Rather, he's really reached a new level. And that's why he also, he gets uplifted, because he is no longer bound to this place.
Would you say that this, though, is true about all, let's say, leaders? Because wouldn't that be true about, let's say, the president of the U.S.? Like, it doesn't matter what I ate for breakfast, right? But for the president, like his breakfast action, the things that he had for breakfast and what he did in the morning is much more important than what I did in the morning, in some sense, right?
Yes and no, though. Sorry, okay. Finish your thought.
No, that's my thought.
The reason I say yes and no, and this is something that Donald Trump, right? Mm-hmm. I don't understand. How can you vote for him? This is the guy you want to be president? To be clear, I voted in Ohio, and I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I didn't actually vote at all, just because I was too embarrassed with the candidates. Either way, my point being is no one looks at Donald Trump or at the American presidency today as thought leaders, unfortunately, but that's just the reality. He is the main manager.
Right.
He's the main principal. Now,
administrate. I mean, like, what is it called? It's in English there. I forgot. It's not, is it called an administrator? Yeah, administration. And so there is an administration aspect to it. It's like,
but I'm saying he is not. Now, you could say, right, because we have in Judaism, we have blessings for like a king.
Yeah.
Right? Because we say that God is sharing from his kingship. Okay. Mm-hmm. And we have for brilliant people that God is sharing with his wisdom, from his wisdom for other people. When you see a Donald Trump, you'd want to come and say, the president of the United States is basically like, the king of the world, so to speak. I don't know if that's so true anymore, but there's a sense where like, right. He presides over the government. Exactly. CW. But so I don't know if we have to categorize him as the thought leader. People sometimes confuse that as like, if you have this job, you must have become like, you must be the best, but just, that's not the reality as we see, obviously. Mm-hmm. So should the president also be a thought leader? In theory, that would make sense. Someone to getting to that point and responsible for so many things would want that for himself. However, I don't think Joe Biden, right? And I'm not saying that he doesn't read his Bible, but is Joe Biden learning Torah for its own sake? And we don't even have to call it Torah. Is Joe Biden participating in life for its own sake, in the sense where he is trying to be humble, bring people closer, be the wellspring, be all these things that we've spoken about. And that's not the reality. There's games, there's politics, there's biases built into that system. And I don't even necessarily blame people, but that would be a place where you would for sure want to have, right? Like we said earlier, the person that becomes to Torah grants him sovereignty, dominion, and jurisprudence. That happens afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Once, because you weren't looking for the glory, and because you just embodied and acted in a way where clearly you are being humble, taking these things. You have wisdom, you have insight. You could offer counsel. Once you're doing all these things, then ultimately, the Torah will grant you sovereignty and dominion and jurisprudence, which is the people that need to do that should then go into leadership positions. And then again, they would have to be very careful. Mm-hmm. They would have to be careful into being careful with their words. If they're at a house party, don't be talking to Mrs. Jenkins. All those things would now come into play, obviously. And once they are that wellspring, right? Donald Trump, if you're calling out this reporter, right, then you are not forgiving of insults. Mm-hmm. Right? So these are the people that are failing in that sense. So those are not our thought leaders.
Yeah.
Beseder, that was an hour, almost and a half on just one. Yeah, these are long. These are doozies. Mm-hmm. So we are not going to continue next week. We're going to continue in 2 weeks. Let's just see what we're going to talk about. Rabbi Shuban Levi.
It's a big one.
How do they call Bat Kol over here? The echo resounds from Mount Horeb. So first of all, Bat Kol, it is actually an echo, right? Which is like not the daughter,
the daughter of a sound,
the daughter of a voice, right? No, that would be the exact translation, but it's it's an echo. But it's also being seen as the divine voice from God, right? Mm-hmm. From heaven, coming out and speaking to us. Okay, beautiful women. We have the tablets over here. Torah study. Beautiful. Bamot. Okay, we'll have to translate what that word means. Okay, awesome. Sir, this, as always, was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. This was great.
You.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Anyone that was watching, enjoy. Wesley, I don't know what went down over there. I guess it didn't work out. CW, take care, brother.
All right.